So, thank you for joining me today. My name is Dr. Portia Hopkins, and I will be conducting an interview with Mr. Clinton Johns. The date is February 10th, 2021, and it is 11:12 in the morning. Mr. Johns, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to get to talk to you about your experiences in Pleasantville, as well as your experiences as a Negro League baseball player. Could you start off by telling us your first and last name and when you
My,
were born?
my first name is Clinton Johns. My full name is Clinton Johns.
And when were you born, Mr. Johns?
I was born January 19th, 1947.
Great. Mr. Johns, what were the names of your parents and your grandparents?
My parents' name were Alice and Clinton Johns. And my grandparents' name were Willie Jackson and Mamie Jackson.
Perfect.
They all came from Alabama.
And is it both sides of your family, your maternal and paternal grandparents came from Alabama?
Yeah.
I noticed in your video that you were wearing an Alabama sweatshirt.
Well, it was meant to be noticed.
I noticed that. Yes, I too am an alumni of the University of Alabama. So roll tide to you
Have
and your family.
a lot of relatives finished from Alabama.
Yes, sir. I had a great time when I was in Tuscaloosa. It was very enjoyable. It was very an enjoyable experience for me. Mr. Johns, could you talk to us about who the oldest person you remember meeting in your family as a child?
Well, the oldest person I can remember meeting in my family as a child was probably my grandmother and my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, some of the things we talked about. And my grandfather died early, and nobody was left but my grandmother as far as grandma and grandpa. But my grandmother, I can remember earlier in my life, about 2 or 3 years old, we lived on in these houses on a street called Jackson Street in Belfast, Alabama, that were used to house the workers that were working the fields for the owner, for the master or the owner. So my grandma and my grandpa are probably the ones that I remember the most as far as the oldest.
And did they talk about what it was like growing up in Alabama when they were younger, or did they talk to you about those family members that may have been enslaved in the past?
Yes, without a doubt. Uh, uh, they when they first came to Alabama, they went to a place called McWilliams, Alabama, and it was 5 of them, 3 girls and 2 boys, and they were getting ready to bring my mom into the house to start doing some housework instead of doing field work. And my grandmother and my uncles, they told me that they slipped back to McWilliams, Alabama, and tied croaker sacks around the horses so they wouldn't hear them coming in to get my mom before they took her into the big house.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was very interesting, some of the stories I've heard about, about things like that. So I really kept that to heart, and I told my grandkids and also my kids about these stories as well.
It sounded like your mom and her brothers or her uncles were very protective of your mother. Your grandmother was very protective of your mother.
Yes, without a doubt, because all the rest of them had moved and slipped away and came to Belfast, which is Daphne, Alabama, and she was the last one that was left. And so they sneaked back, as I said earlier, and got her so that she wouldn't be subjected probably to rape or working in the big house and having to deal with those things that most of the ladies that worked in the big house had to deal with as far as those things were concerned.
Yeah, they rescued her, it sounds like to me.
Yes,
They rescued her. That,
that's right. They rescued her.
that's some incredible bravery and foresight to say, I'm gonna go rescue, my daughter. Um,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go and plan that. That's really incredible. And it sounds to me like those stories were passed down in your family.
Yes. Yes. And we talk about them every time we have reunions. We haven't had one in a while, but we always talk about it. And just to share a tidbit of information with you, the little story, the first family reunion we had, we were all up at the place where we on Jackson Street, which is a street that was named Jackson Street after the Jackson family clan. And even right now today, if you go where my grandmother lived, you see a street named Jackson Circle, where she ran a business for I don't know how many years. But anyway, this first family reunion, we were all there and we were having fun, and we saw these white kids coming down the road, and we were wondering where they're coming. My my cousins say, "Those are your cousins, man." It was real funny, but I was just, I said, wow, are you serious? And so as we began to get older, we began to listen to the stories that were told about what happened as to why, things happen and how they happen. So it was very interesting, very interesting. It's things I pass on to my grandchildren as well.
Oh, that oral testimony is so important. Just passing down those stories through the generations is
Yeah.
one of my favorite things about family reunions. Mr. Johns, could you talk to me a little bit about any family members that were in the military? Do you recall?
Yeah, my dad and my uncle were both in the Navy. And my dad joined the Navy. His parents died early in life. My dad joined the Navy, and he took care of his two sisters. And then later on, my uncle, he joined the Navy too. So my dad joined the Navy. He was in the CBs, which is construction battalion. And what they would do is that when the Japanese World War II, when the Japanese would come and blow up the landing field where the planes would be. They would go out there and repair them or build roads to where the soldiers could get to destinations where it might have been not able to get to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and my uncle was in the Navy, and he was very instrumental in my life in a lot of ways as far as baseball is concerned. But when he got out the Navy, stayed a little while in New York, Niagara Falls, New York, and then he came to Houston and stayed with us for a little while, and taught me a lot of things about baseball because he was a very good semi-pro baseball player, and
Oh,
we'll discuss some of those things later on as we get ready to talk about my baseball career.
sure, sure. Could you talk to me a little bit about how your family ended up in Houston?
Oh wow, very interesting story. Well, as you know, back during Jim Crow, everybody was going different directions. Some people was going west, some people were going north, some people going California, Chicago, New York, wherever they could escape the Jim Crowism that was going on back in the day. And so my dad and a gentleman by the name of Mr. Fred Swinson, which was my grandmother's half sisters, which made me cousins to them, they decided to leave Alabama and go to California, whereas they could make a better living. And as I said just a few minutes ago, to get out from underneath the Jim Crowism that was in the South. And doing so, coming down I-10 West, they broke down here in Houston, which was probably in 1950, 55 or 54. And that was the end of the story. And at that time, construction work was good here, and that's where we stayed. We stayed here, and my dad formed a construction business, and that was the end of it. And we've been here ever since then.
Wow. So you almost got to Houston by accident.
No, it was I as I look back on it, Dr. Hopkins, it was divine intervention.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It sounds like it. I mean, of all the cities you could have stopped, you stopped in Houston and you landed in Pleasantville.
Yeah, well, not so much a stop. We broke down. And the thing about it is when we broke down, we broke down. Well, I don't know whether you're familiar with Fifth Ward.
Yes,
Fifth,
sir.
Fifth Ward is where we stayed at 2902 and a half Blissful Street. I'll never forget the address.
Wow.
We place called the Bottom. Okay. And we stayed there, I think probably about maybe 2 years. Went to Bruce Elementary School. It no longer exists. They have a new Bruce Elementary School now. And as a matter of fact, my granddaughter works at one of them right now, mentoring kids. And after we got to Bruce Elementary, we stayed there for a while. And my dad came to Pleasantville doing construction work when Pleasantville was first being built. And for somehow or another, he was pouring slabs. And the late Judson Robinson Sr. and Judson Robinson Jr., they connected, and the rest is history. We were Pleasantville bound, and we moved to Pleasantville in 1957, and I've been here ever since.
Wow. That definitely sounds like divine intervention. I think so. I think that's certainly divine intervention.
Yeah.
So if I'm getting the story right, your family lands in Pleasantville. Your dad has a construction business. He's helping to build the houses that are emerging in Pleasantville and around the city.
Yes.
And so in a way, with your dad being an entrepreneur and a businessman, do you feel like your experiences were different than people that might not have had those opportunities at that time during like
Oh,
Jim Crow era Houston?
oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it was Jim Crow here still in Houston, Texas. I mean, we ran into some situations working in different places like Tomball and Baytown back during that time, to where it's Jim Crow was yet still prevalent during that time. But meeting the Robinson family was, I would say, a divine intervention too, for the simple reason, cause if we wouldn't have never moved to Pleasantville, my baseball career nor my career would not have launched. So that was very, very instrumental for me, because the house that we moved in, Dr. Hopkins, I planted grass there, never knowing it was that we were going to move there. It was a sales office house, and never knowing that we were going to move there. And eventually my dad and Mr. Robinson got together and we bought that house. And when we talk about Pleasantville, I could just go on and on and on about it. I know there are probably some more other questions that you're going to ask me about it. So I don't want to go before you, but that's where we are right now.
Oh, I enjoy listening to your story, and there are two things that I pulled from just this last little piece that you talked about. The first is I grew up in Tomball.
Oh, you did?
I
Okay.
did. Yes, my grandparents ended up in Tomball, and we were one of the first Black families in our neighborhood, and they dealt with immense racism, and this was in the 80s.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
just horrible, horrible racism that they dealt with. And I worked in Baytown. And
Oh,
so my ears perked up when you said those two things, because I'm like, oh man, you're speaking my language now. And then the second thing is the home that you said you planted grass at. I believe I have an image of that home from the newspaper. If it's the same home that it was the sales office that Judson was working out of. I think I have a picture of that home, a sketch
wow.
there, from the ad.
8650 Othello.
Yes, I think so. I'm going to have to send you that, because one of the things that when I was doing the preliminary research, I went to the newspapers and I was looking at some of the ads for Pleasantville, and they
Yes.
had a picture or sketch rather of the house. and the
Wow.
address. And one of the things that I just thought was so striking about the ad was they said there are paved streets there. Like that was one of
Yeah.
the things that they talked about. There are paved streets. And then if you and your spouse made at least $200 a month, then you could get into these houses. And so it
That's
really seemed like they were, selling this portion of the American dream to African Americans
oh,
from the ads.
yes. Yes. Yes, without a doubt. That we that you're right, Dr. Hopkins. That was the American dream for us. Because I mean, just think about it. You living in a wooden shack, or however you want to call it, back doing in Alabama, move here, and as a matter of fact, when we moved to Fifth Ward, those two families, the Swinson family and my family, we stayed in what was a shotgun house that you could look through the front door all the way through the back door.
Right.
And and they were side by side. The walls were just paper tissue thin, but we made it. We made it. We made it. We made it. We made it to Pleasantville. Matter of fact, the Swinson family and the Johns family moved to Pleasantville. So it was just, as I say again, it was divine intervention for us to be here.
Do you remember moving into the house like when you were a little boy?
Yes, I was so excited I didn't know what to do. Coming out of Fifth Ward, I was so excited. I didn't know what to do. I did not know what to do because, as I said just a few minutes ago, staying in that house in Fifth Ward with my cousins on one side, we on the other side, hearing sirens all night long. And there was a juke joint across from where we were, not far, maybe about 200 yards or 400 yards from where we were. There was this big oak tree. I'll never forget it, where the winos would come out there and they'd sit up underneath the tree and start singing their wino songs and stuff like that.
Goodness.
It was just awesome. And they'd be in the prayer. And we find wine bottles and stuff because there was a prairie that we played in baseball when we wanted to play baseball. But coming to Pleasantville, that was just totally, it was just, it would, and people who stayed in Pleasantville, Dr. Hopkins, they called us the Baby River Oaks. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yes, really. I mean, we were bused to Fifth Ward, to E.O. Smith, and that just wasn't happening. But we had such great people that work here in the community that had such outstanding track records as far as voting is concerned, as far as Judson Robinson Sr., Judson Robinson Jr., who Judson Sr. was a precinct judge of 259. And after Judson Sr. retired, Judson Jr. took over. And then I think it was Miss Minnie B. Wallace and Mr. Broussard and Mr. Talmadge Sharp and Mr. Talmadge Sharp and Mr. Cooper. I'm leaving out some names, but Deborah Adams, who's now our 259 voter precinct person, we had one of the strongest voting Black precincts in the state of Texas.
I've read that Pleasantville was like known for that.
Yes, definitely. If you wanted to get in office, it would be pretty wise of you as a politician to drop by.
Wow.
It was a lot of fun. As a kid, I watched all that happen. I watched ditches that now we have a beautiful boulevard and a walking trail, and we have Holland Middle School. We have a library. We have a new recreation center. So this community had some of the best people, top-notch professional people, entrepreneurs, you name it, we had it.
Wow. I've heard from other interviews that there was a store there in the community and a dry cleaners. Do you remember any other businesses being in the community?
We had everything we needed here. We had a fish market, we had a barbershop, we had a pool hall, we had a washateria, we had Mr. Allison, who was a Jew, who sold clothes in the neighborhood. He had his store. We had what we call gym store, some Chinese that were here that had a store back during the day. And what we call up on the front, as you go up to Pleasantville Drive on Market Street, we had Thibodeau service station, Mr. Thibodeau on the Gulf Station there, and we had everything. Matter of fact, that's where the Robinsons real estate company was, up on the front, what we call the front. We had store, we had a cafe there, we had a barbershop there. We had everything that we needed here in Pleasantville, as much as we could get in here.
Wow. And do you
very historical, very historical. We had a drive-in across the street. We had a hamburger place called Danny's Stack, where you could get 5 hamburgers for $1. It was the bomb.
And do you think that just how insulated the community was, do you think that that's one of the things that contributed to it being so unique? Or were there other factors that contributed to the uniqueness of Pleasantville?
Well, one of the unique things about Pleasantville is that I think the politicians recognized how strong Pleasantville was.
Mm-hmm.
And prideful people that came into the community to establish this community, they laid the foundation for African Americans to really be with one another. One of the great pastors, I'll never forget him. He was a well-loved man here in the community. Dr. Haywood Wiggins at Gethsemane Baptist Church. He was just a wow. I can't say enough about him. He was a jewel. Maybe running ahead of myself just to reminisce on some things that happened in Pleasantville. 1995, if I'm not mistaken, we had a fire because we had warehouses that were lined off of Market Street. Mm-hmm. And we had a fire. And if this fire that started, if it would have continued and blew up some of the chemicals that was in there, Pleasantville might have not been on the map. But I remember Bob Lanier was the mayor during that time. I was president of the Civic League at that time.
Okay.
He took us. They came and evacuated Pleasantville, and in the process of evacuation, they took us downtown to the mayor's office. And Reverend Wiggins was there, myself, and I can't remember who else was there. But when Reverend Wiggins speak, everybody listens. And we spoke to the mayor and told him that he needed to get some emergency units out there right now. It happened so fast, Dr. Hopkins. I'm serious and real fast. So that's some of the things, and that is just a few of the things about the great legends and the great people whose shoulders I got on to be where I am today. We had judges, we had lawyers, we had attorneys, we had doctors, we had nurses, we had everything we needed. A very prideful community here in Pleasantville.
And did you guys ever find out what started the fires?
No, we did not. I know it was when the fire department, the matter of fact, the fire department lost an engine in there, $500,000 engine in that fire. And in the process, Senator John Whitmire and I met with some people, and I can't discuss some of the things that Senator Whitmire said, but he was really ticked, Dr. Hopkins. And so I can remember getting a letter from Greenleaf, it was an environmental organization, to go to Atlanta to a environmental justice conference. And Senator Whitmire just really, he did a great job in making things happen, as well as all the other people that make things happen. And the manifest that should have been there to let the fire department know what was in there, they didn't have it. So we were just kind of didn't know exactly what was in there, but we do know that it was jet fuel in there, that if it would have got to it, it would have blew Pleasantville, half of it up.
Yeah, that would have been a really bad situation had that
Yeah.
jet fuel ignited.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's horrible. Ugh. Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad everything
Yeah. It
worked
worked out.
out, that people were safe. Yeah, because that could have
Yeah.
been a really bad situation.
We had a lawyer out of Florida, one of the best Black renowned lawyers out of Florida, named Willie Gary. You might not be familiar with him, but he came. Yeah, he flew in on his jet and everything. It was nice just to see somebody Black with that kind of clout.
Right, right. Wow.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a little bit about some of the activities, and this will actually kind of lead us into our conversation about baseball and the Negro Leagues. Could you talk about the activities that were available in Pleasantville to children and young adults?
Wow. We didn't miss a beat, Dr. Hopkins. And when I say we didn't beat, we had Boy Scouts, we had Girl Scouts, we had piano lessons, we had baseball, we had everything that we wanted, everything. I can remember as a Boy Scout, Mr. Bell was my Boy Scout, was my Cub Scout, Boy Scout leader, because I was in the Cub Scouts in Fifth Ward, but he was the Boy Scout leader out here. And I can remember sometimes we get paper, well, we get up on Saturday morning and we go collect the paper that people had read and they didn't know it. And they knew to save it for us because we had certain Saturdays that we went and picked up, and we would take the paper and sell it so that we could have some fun, some money in our coffers to go to different places like Camp Strake,
Yeah.
different places, that different outings and stuff. And that was just absolutely wonderful for me. The girls, they had piano lessons, they had volleyball, we had a recreation center that really served us well. We'd have some phenomenal activities. We had what we call sock hops, and I know you don't know nothing about that. That's a little bit for you, but nevertheless, we had sock hops, what they call canteens, and it was just, oh boy, it was just, I wish I could go back.
And these were all held at the community center, or were there other like institutions that hosted these events for the kids?
At church, different places, yeah. And like I say, you go to Miss Rita Bell Franks. She taught piano, and then you just like you have a lot of educated kids that really help the kids in whatever area that they need to help them
Okay. Yeah,
in.
I one of the things that I read about again in the newspaper was once baseball started up, that it was wildly popular in Pleasantville, and that
Yeah, yeah,
a lot of people would come into the community to even watch the games.
very true, very true. And in doing so, Justin Robinson Jr. he was really sold on baseball. He really wanted that here, and he got it here. Uh, and let me back up just a few minutes, and I'll walk forward
Sure.
because I don't want to forget this, because this is one that put Pleasantville not so much as on the map, but made Pleasantville shine so much in the eyes of Houston, Texas. I have sitting before me different proclamations and things that were made from different council persons, and a congressional proclamation that was made from Congressman Gene Green. This is
Oh,
a proclamation for my wife for the work that she done from Carol Mills Galloway. This is a proclamation from Congressman Gene Green for the work that we did in the community.
wow.
Uh, this is another proclamation that I have here from Houston Community College. We were very involved with Houston Community College. So that's another proclamation right there. And this is another proclamation that was made to the Civic League from Carol Mims Galloway. And I also have a bigger proclamation that's sitting behind me somewhere. This is a proclamation. This is a proclamation from the to the Pleasantville Civic League Day from the from the mayor at that particular time. Looked like Bob. Is that Bob? No, Chief Lee Brown.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And was this for the work that you and your family were doing in the community with baseball and just kind of civic engagement?
Yes, 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 yes. So you guys can really that'll be good to put there as far as the archive is concerned. But
Yeah, I would love to scan those so we can include them
yeah.
in your interview. That would be
So I also have something too. I'm going to let you scan too. That is just a brief snippet of how Pleasantville, well, matter of fact, Precinct 259 came to establish itself so much. So as you see, I have programs that we used to have banquets all the time. That's one of the ways that we stayed afloat. And this was in 2002.
Okay.
2000.
This
And
was
I have the
Civic League banquet.
Civic League banquet. I have the seating chart, service award, who was at the head table, everything. And so I just have a lot of memorabilia here from being president during that time. So you're welcome to it.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, how long did you serve as president? That seems like a big responsibility with everything else you have going on.
Yeah, I served as president off and on for about maybe 8, 9, 10 years.
Wow.
But totally, when I wasn't as president, I was still working with the community in some capacity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just like I said, I was over the youth athletic program here in the community, as well as president of the Civic Club.
And so in those days, you were able to give back.
Well, let's walk down that lane right now, since we're just about there, if it's okay with you.
Sure.
I had never picked up a baseball until I came to Houston, Texas. The closest I had picked up to throwing anything of any significance was throwing corn cobs at little mice running along the ledge in the place where in the corn crib. So if you may not know what a corn crib is where corn is kept. We call it a crib because it was made like a house, but we had sacks of corn in there that we would go and feed the hogs when it was feeding time, and we would break the corn in half, and the little mice that's running along the edge, we would throw at them. And my cousin and I, Rayfield, so we could see who was the sharpest, who could knock off the most mice. And that was my throwing experience. And so the next throwing experience I had was with ice potatoes, because when we go and pick up ice potatoes, because I did do some work back in the day. I did never pick cotton, but I picked cut corn, I picked ice potatoes, and I weeded what we call soybean patches. Okay. And so I had my share of country living as a country boy. So when I came to Houston, Texas, never did I know that I would pick up something of a baseball kind of like figure when I got to Pleasantville. And so when I did come to Pleasantville in 1957, as you stated earlier, they had one of the best baseball programs in the city of Houston. And I just fell in just like nobody's business. And I talked about my uncle a little earlier, how instrumental he was in helping me getting started in this particular career, because he played baseball in the Navy and semi-pro baseball in Niagara Falls, New York, and played semi-pro baseball when he got here. And I just love the game. As a matter of fact, let me share a tidbit of information. The late, great Hank Aaron, who just passed here recently.
Yes, sir.
My dad played against him and his brother.
Wow.
Yeah, in Alabama. And so my uncle used to hit baseballs to me in the house that we moved in. And there was a ditch then. It wasn't an esplanade now, it was a ditch. And one of the things I found out is that if that baseball went in the ditch, it wouldn't be no more good because it would be too heavy. And I became very efficient at fielding, and that's how I became a second baseman in baseball. And so when we got to Pleasantville and baseball program was just what I needed, that's the one that really launched my future.
Wow. In hearing you talk about your early experiences with baseball, it sounds like you were always, as you had said earlier, kind of divine intervention. You were always going towards that way. If you were throwing ice potatoes and throwing corn husks at mice, and then out of necessity, you're fielding these baseballs so they don't go in the ditch. Right?
Yes.
It sounds like you had gotten all the training before you even picked up a baseball.
Seems that way.
Do you remember one of your earlier games when you were a little boy?
Oh wow, yes. Yes. We played a little league game. Well, this probably is one that stands out more than a whole lot of others. I can remember some other ones too as well, but this one stands out more. We played a little league game in Fidelity, which was an all-black neighborhood too, right adjacent to Pleasantville. We played against them, and they had this young man named Jimmy Roberts, and they're playing against this team that we were rivals. And I promise you, it was packed. And they had this kid that played for Fidelity. His nickname was Honeycomb. And Honeycomb, yes. And he played without any cleats, no shoes.
He was barefoot?
This is a true story. And so I get kind of, wow, it's a lot to this story, but I get kind of, but anyway, he was their superstar. He was their superstar. And I mean, he was a superstar. Him and Jimmy Roberts had a duel that day that was just unbelievable. I'll never forget a little league game like that. And so that was one of the little league games that I was a part of that will be forever etched in my memory. Mm-hmm. There are some that was played here in Pleasantville as different teams came in and out of Pleasantville, from the Ryan Sports team out of BC, Elmore, and other places that came that were phenomenal games that we had. But most of all, here's the good deal about it, Dr. Hopkins, is that we had enough kids in Pleasantville to have our own teams and compete against one another.
Wow.
And we have teams that come in from different places like Clinton Park and Fidelity and Kedgemer Gardens and Hardy Street and all the other places. But we have enough youth in this community to establish our own teams. Going back to when I was I want to say not 67, but in the 70s, in 1967, I developed a disease called psoriasis, a skin disease. And I had to be hospitalized at the Methodist Hospital for months at a time to keep it under control. And it was on the heart floor at the Methodist Hospital, and that we had heart patients. And this particular Black gentleman came in, they flew him in. I don't know where they flew him in from, but he was a heart patient. He was there for heart problems. And so he was my roommate. And so as we began to talk, he asked me where did I live, and I told him Pleasantville. And so he said he grew up in the area and he had a son and what have you not. And he named his son name, but I never knew Honeycomb's real name. I never really true story. And so he said, my son will be here after a while. He said, you might know him. Guess who his son was? His son was. I cried. Wow. We cried. Honeycomb had got whatever he had done. He was just, it gives me chills just to think that man went through what he went through as a young kid, and now here he is looking fine, debonair, and just successful.
Wow.
So those things in that baseball world that took me to places where I've never been before, seen things I've never seen before, uh, is something that I'll never forget. How did Clinton? How did you really get so deeply involved in baseball? That's a good question. I'm glad you asked. I went to Phyllis Wheatley Senior High School. My baseball coach was Elwood Piper. My assistant baseball coach
Go
was
ahead.
uh, was Jackie Carr, who is a legendary, hear me well, a legendary basketball coach, one of the winningest Black coaches in the state of Texas.
At Phyllis Wheatley.
At Phyllis Wheatley.
And was he the basketball
And
coach?
yeah, he was a basketball coach. Jackie Carr was. Matter of fact, he has a book out. Yeah, he has a book out. But anyway, Elwood Piper was my coach, the head coach of the baseball team.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the park, we were not playing. Wheatley and Yates played a baseball game up at Pleasantville Park. When Wheatley came out in that purple and white, and Jack Yates came with that crimson and gold, out on the field practicing, I said, this is it. This is what I want to do right here.
Right.
That sealed the deal right there. So the rest is kind of history. That life in baseball continued. And so after I became a senior, I really stuck with baseball. And Jackie Carr, the same, that stayed in Pleasantville, Elwood Piper, who stayed in Pleasantville.
Mm-hmm.
These were coaches. When I finished high school, I wanted to go to college to play baseball. And Jackie Carr was a Prairie View All-American basketball player. And he came to my house, sit in my front room with my mom, and told me, Miss Johns, don't worry about it. He'll get in school. Wow.
Wow.
And we went to Prairie View, and I can remember, if I'm not mistaken, sitting out in the car, filling out the paperwork, and Mr. Carr came and asked me, he said, everything okay? You okay? I said, yes, sir. He said, anything you don't know, let me know, I'll get it for you. And that was it. That was it. So I enrolled in Prairie View. I played there at Prairie View A&M College for 1 year. And the reason why it's in my book that I'm working on right now,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll give you a page of it. The reason why I didn't continue my 4 years at Prairie View is because we had a losing season. We didn't win but one game, and that was on forfeit.
Oh, goodness.
Yes. Yes. But the experience that I had going to Jackson State, playing Grambling University,
Mm-hmm.
at home, Houston Baptist, Southern, all the HBCU colleges. That was an experience. So one day, after the season, after that was over, we started playing semi-pro baseball, where we went all over Texas to play baseball. And the part of my book is called the Texas Tour, that I give a brief snippet of all the places that we played here in Texas. And this particular night, we were in what we call the City League semi-pro team here in Houston, Texas, at Memorial Park.
Okay.
And this team that we played, I don't remember their names, but anyway, I think it was Danny Herrera, who used to pitch for the Chicago White Sox, was pitching for this opposing team. And we touched him up so bad, so much that he came to us and said, hey, you guys, you don't need to play here. I got somewhere else I need for y'all to go and play. And so somehow or another, we got scouted by Indianapolis Clowns. And when I say we, a friend of mine, Booker T. Eason, who we played from elementary school, we played together at college, and we played together at Indianapolis. He's deceased now, but he and I went and joined the Indianapolis Clowns that year in 1970.
And
And
had you been to Indianapolis before?
no, never.
Wow.
We our reporting place was in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's where all the team reported in Charlotte, North Carolina. So Booker T and I, we went to Charlotte. We reported, and so when we got there, we went to the front desk, and the guy and I said, we're here to meet the manager. We were told to meet the manager, and so we went to room such and such and such and knocked on the door, and they said, "Come on in." And so Butch Herndon from Benton Harbor, Michigan, was there to greet us, and he said, "Who are you looking for?" I said, "We're looking for the manager, so we can get some meal money." And so over to the side there was a bed, and so he said, "Dero," and we started looking around because we didn't see nobody in the room. So he pulled the covers back, and I hope I'm not offending anybody, but you'll see it on the poster. He was a midget, and he was the manager of the Indianapolis Clown during that time. And so that was a start. And so we started playing. We did spring training, and we started playing. And the first place we played in was Columbia, South Carolina.
Okay.
And I promise you, that was something I'll never forget. You got to realize that Indianapolis Clowns were the team that didn't join the Negro Leagues officially until probably 1920 or 19 something like that. Rube Foster, who was the person that started the Negro Leagues in 1920 out of Calvert, Texas, a black man, of course, got all these teams together, and that's how the Negro Leagues came to form by Mr. Rube Foster in 1920. And the Indianapolis Clowns didn't join it officially until probably about maybe 3 or 4 years later. But that was some serious baseball. The Negro Baseball Leagues was some serious baseball. And even though the Indianapolis Clowns was sort of like an entertainment team, they did what we call seventh inning stretch. And most of the time in the seventh inning stretch, they'll get them saying, "Take me out to the ball game, take me out to the park, buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if we ever get back." You know the story.
Yes, sir.
But anyway, the seventh inning stretch was showtime for the Indianapolis Clowns. And we did games for thousands of people, 7,000, Comiskey Park, Chicago, County Stadium, Milwaukee, Toronto, Canada, St. Catharines, Canada, Hamilton, Canada, all up and down Rocky Mount, Carolina, Oneonta, New York, Albany, New York. It was I'll never forget it. But anyway, this particular act that they did, I just sit there with my mouth open the first time they did it, because they did it off a song called "It's All in the Game" called "Love" by the Four Tops, and it was called Shadow Ball. And so it was just an imaginary ball that these guys went through to the routine that they went to use an imaginary ball and use just the dust of the ground to, when they throw it, to make things become so imaginary. And Dero Austin and Samuel Bryson, Birmingham Sam was his show name. And if you look at the movie Bingo Long and the All-Stars, two of those guys that played in the movie with me, that played in that movie, are the one that played on the Indianapolis Clowns. And Samuel Bryson, which is Birmingham Sam, his show name, and Dero Austin were part of that shadow ball. You'll see him juggling the ball like nobody's business. And even Goose Tatum played for the Indianapolis Clowns for a while. Yeah. So Page played for the Indianapolis Clowns for a while. The thing with Satchel is that wherever Satchel could make a payday, he'd make a payday. So a lot of people just had to wait on Satchel till he got there before they even start playing. So just some of the stories that I learned. And so the last reunion I went to, which we have every year in Birmingham, the last reunion I went to, I talked to Mr. Jackson, who was 99 years old,
Wow.
brought to the ESPN special on the Negro Leagues during that time. And Mookie Wilson took a picture with him of the New York Mets. And Mr. Jackson used to tell us stories about Satchel Paige and all the other famous people, legendary people that he played against. It was just amazing. And the thing about it is that you travel all over the world signing autographs after the game, and kids just saying, before I even started, got into the major leagues, kids say, I've never seen nobody play as great as you guys. Wow. And to see the first base chair to first base and play first base in a chair. This is the truth.
What?
You might have saw it in the little piece that I sent you dedicated to the decades.
Yes.
On parts of it. But anyway, had that big old glove.
Yes.
The glove and the big bat and a little short bat for D-Row. And it was just entertaining. And the kids, and I remember we played in some part of Iowa. And this is in the movie with Bingo Long and the All-Stars. We played in some place called in some part of Iowa. Might have been Des Moines, Iowa, the Twin City, Iowa. But anyway, we played there. And after the game, these little white kids, we were in the shower and showering. These little white kids, they stacked each other on the back to see the little midget in the shower because they had never seen anything like that before.
Oh,
so
no.
When I walked, true story. So when I walked up to the dugout, when I walked up to the place to where we take the shower, they saw me there, so they jumped down and ran. So these are just, and I tell you, I had never seen anything like that before. It just made me so excited. So as we continue to go along with Indianapolis Clowns, how did you get your start, Clinton? It started all here in Pleasantville.
Wow. Let me ask you this, because I as you were talking, I was just thinking about the Negro League Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
And just the ways that we're starting to really memorialize and remember all of these like amazing things that happened in the past by people of color, particularly African Americans, that are not really talked about in the history books, or if they are, it's like, one little paragraph and then they move on. And so do you think that, particularly now, the climate that we're in and the time that we're in, that these stories are important for the youth to hear? And if so, why? Like, I guess my question would be like, how do these stories add to the richer experience of learning about African American history?
What it does and what it did for me, and I think what it does and what it does for what it has done for the kids I've coached is, first of all, to know that you're able to have that opportunity to play in that setting. Mm-hmm. And then that's number one. Number two is that you can now be what you want to be in that arena right now. There was this guy named, I'll have to get you that information. I think his name was Howard Johnson. And of course, Mr. Johnson was older than I was. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we talked about the decline of African-American youth in baseball. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that he said, he has an article, he stays in Tennessee. And he said to me, he said, Clinton, he said, I want you to read this, because some of this stuff was already set up to whereas youth during our time could not have access to baseball. Mm. He said, it didn't cost a whole lot, but you had to have the bat, the ball, and the gloves. Whereas football, it was one item. So he really opened my eyes to some things as to how he think it was systematically done, that we didn't have access to those things to play baseball to the level that Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris, all of the other guys
Mm-hmm.
that played coming up in the major leagues during that time. And as you can see, Jackie Robinson endured so much to get to where he got. And not only that, but I was looking at a story, looking at a documentary or an interview, as a matter of fact, with Hank Aaron at the LBJ Library just here
Mm-hmm.
the other night. And just to think about some things that Hank Aaron said, and for Dr. Ravel, he was the curator of the Birmingham Southern Museum, where I'm inducted at in the Hall of Fame. He told me, he said that Hank Aaron, when he first reported at 18 years old, had a brown paper bag and $1 in his pocket to
Wow.
report to Indianapolis Clowns. You know how much money he made with the Indianapolis Clowns? $200 a month, $1 a day meal money.
Hmm.
Now, don't you think? And guess what? And so the interviewer asked him, "Who would you say now, Mr. Aaron, is one of the persons that you think that the African American young man or African American baseball player that you would recommend for youth to look up to?" You
Mm-hmm.
know who he said?
Who?
Derek Jeter.
Really?
Derek Jeter. And which I can see that. Derek Jeter was not boastful. He always was on his job. He became the captain of the Yankees. So these are the things that really just helped us along here in Pleasantville, as our youth program was just uh, on the top of everything here in the community, and in Houston alone. So it served its purpose. And so even right now, working with the youth in this neighborhood, and working with the youth in Houston,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because I've worked with Parks and Recreation since I've been in Houston, as far as athletics is concerned, with basketball and baseball. And so I've coached 4 decades of 4 generations of kids.
Wow.
I've coached 4 generations of kids. So I was happy to give my life away like that, because uh, I never despised small beginnings. Never, never.
I heard in your the documentary that you shared yesterday, you said something that really stuck out to me, that baseball has been like a ministry to you, and that
Oh my.
it was a way for you to minister. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I pastored for 15 years and retired. And now I'm a member of Loving Word Fellowship Church, which I have one of the greatest bishops it is in the state of Texas and anywhere else, Dr. Paul D. Landrew. And baseball became a ministry to me, because when I first started my ministry, one of the places that my worship center was at the same elementary school that I went to.
Hmm.
The same elementary school. That's where I held my church services. And so I was still coaching. And one thing that I asked my parishioners to do was to get themselves involved in community work. And I'd ask them to go to a baseball game. Make your schedule out to where you can attend a game, to be among the parents and the kids that played on the team. And
Mm-hmm.
it became a ministry to me, because I had kids coming from different places in the community,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw needs there in the change of their attitude, their disposition, and just a whole lot of things. And the parents really thanked me for they could see a difference in the kid that they had, that and they can see some things that were not there before.
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, yeah, and when you are disciplined and when you don't stand for any hanky panky, you get the best out of kids. I'm gonna give you a story, the prime example as to why ministry was so great to me in this particular time. You might not know it, but you will know it, and we all know it, that every community is transitioning ethnically wise. Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
when people used to be predominantly African American, it's not predominantly African American anymore. So we have Hispanics, we have some whites, we have a good mix here in the community. And being president of the Pleasantville Civic League brought me in touch with a lot of people. And this Hispanic couple moved to Pleasantville, and they came to one of the meetings, or came to my house. I don't remember, but I do remember talking to them. And they had the daughter that was a translator, and they were having a problem because they lived on Pleasantville Drive in Pleasantville, and her little brother liked soccer, and he kicked the ball and it went into the neighbor's yard, and they were angry, and they treated them mean. And so they asked me, could I come over and just see, because they wanted to build a fence down the front yard, so the ball wouldn't go into the next door neighbor's yard. Mm-hmm. And so I went over and I surveyed it, and I said, okay, well, the city says that you can build a fence in the front yard, coming down your front yard, but it can't be no more than 3 to 4 feet high. I said, you got an okay on that. Go ahead and do it. I said, why would you do that? She said, because my neighbors are mean to my son. I said, why don't you bring him out and let him start playing baseball? So he came out and started playing baseball, little Hispanic kid. And so this kid didn't know what his first base from third base, okay? He didn't know nothing about baseball, but they kept on bringing him. So I kept on working with him. And he was a special needs kid. He was a special need kid. And working with Galena Park ISD, I work with special need kids. But anyway, to make a long story short, he stayed out there. And so he finally did come around. He learned how to catch. He learned how to throw. He learned how to hit. This was so rewarding. And the family was just, you could see the glaze in their eyes, doctor. And so we went to play a game one night. The first game, I had him playing right field. And believe it or not, he became one of my best hitters. And we have what we call pitch, where the coaches pitch to the kids. And so when he got up to the plate to bat, he hit the ball, and the first place he ran to was third base instead of first. And so we got him situated to where he learned how to run the bases. But that was one of the most rewarding moments I've ever had in my life as far as being a coach for these kids. I mean, it was rewarding. I'll never forget the times I lived. And I haven't seen him in a while, but the last time I saw him, now he's grown. The kid is grown, and he's doing fine. And most of the kids that I've coached, I have a kid that sung opera that I didn't know he was an opera singer.
Wow.
And so it's rewarding. But I know it made my church what it was. My membership grew because of ministry in the athletic realm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's ministry. So I'm looking forward to getting back to it. Before the COVID thing happened, we were getting ready to start baseball, but we had to stop here in the city of Houston because COVID just shut down everything. So I'm really looking forward to getting back.
I think we're turning a corner with that. I think, I'm hopeful that maybe in the fall things will be closer to normal, closer to normal than they are now. Were there things that we missed? I feel like we covered a lot of ground today. Were there other things that you wanted to include in this initial interview that maybe we missed?
Well, just to say this before we close. First of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank you and the staff and the people at Rice University for the great work that you guys do, and for the great work that you all continue to do, and that you will do to make Houston a better place to live in. I'm not a stranger to Rice University. And I say that to say this, is that Mr. A.O. Craven, who was a baseball coach, he was a fireman. He used to have kids on the back of his truck and concession stand. And one of my first visits to Rice University was taking some kids to sell concessions at a football game.
Oh, wow.
And so that memory I had of Rice University, and that night, UCLA was playing Rice University.
Did they win?
Huh?
Did
No, they
they
didn't win.
lost? Oh,
They lost. They had they had they had Gary Deben and what's the quarterback name? I don't know what the quarterback name, but they came out there and with those jackets, those blazers with that emblem, and I was just flabbergasted. I said, "Oh my Lord, wow!" But Rice has been very good to Pleasantville.
I
It
think
really
you're a
has.
uniform guy. I think you have an appreciation for the sports uniforms and
I
the
do, I
jerseys
do,
and stuff. Yeah, for sure.
I do.
It's
But I
definitely
think we've quite a bit of ground. And again, I can't thank you enough for choosing me. I don't know how my name got through in the hat, but I'm glad it hit in the hat.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate your kind words. And they have a list, of people that we were interviewing. And every time I interview someone, I always ask if there are other people that we should interview. So we can do that little housekeeping thing at the end. But it's really just been a pleasure to talk to you. I was so excited. I was telling my supervisor today, I'm like, okay, I got to end my meeting early because I'm talking to Mr. Johns today and I want to make sure I'm completely prepared and the internet's working and my baby is sleeping. I want to make sure everything is just perfect for the interview. So I'm so grateful for your time and your efforts, and I'm really just in awe of all that you've accomplished in your life, and really hope that we can continue to dialogue about all of your accomplishments and the work that you've done. I really have enjoyed talking to you today.
Yeah, I got a proclamation from the uh, mayor's office about a couple of weeks ago for Negro League baseball at my church, and I was just blew out the water. Matter
Wow.
of fact, Alvin Bird proclamation from the mayor's office.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
Alvin Bird and district council person, I can't remember his name right offhand, but they made that happen. I want to also give kudos to my wife, my family, my magnificent granddaughter, Maya, who really takes care of her grandpa in every aspect area he sees fit. Uh, I tell you, to have the support that you need to have going through these times, especially now where I'm at. And doctor, I want to tell you that leukemia really turned my life around, made me look at life different.
Yes, sir.
I was diagnosed April of last year, and it just made me start looking at life a little bit different. And there was one thing that I heard somebody say. He said, "If you leave here, this life, this place, and you haven't deposited into the earth realm what you need to deposit, somebody is going to miss because you took
Mhm.
it with you and you didn't leave it on the field."
Yeah.
Wow. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm leaving it on the field. I'm not taking any. So again, I have to say thank you for considering me. I hope I've done a good job by you, and anything that I can do to help you to bring some enrichment, some enlightenment to the African American plight, or just doing anything that I can do to help in any kind of way, I'd be more than happy to.
Well, I appreciate that so much. Thank you.